Can I respond? I've got the Chair's permission, Jamie, to answer your first question. These reports should be taken seriously, but honestly, the Israeli responses are becoming so boring. You know, they say the same thing every time. They're producing the responses by ChatGPT these days, and they spend so much money in the Foreign Ministry on propaganda, you'd think that they would actually come up with something original.
Hi, I'm Madam Pillay, and hi, Mr. Sidoti. Thank you for your report. I have two questions. The first is the Israeli Foreign Ministry today decried a distorted and false report and said that three individuals, so referring to the Commission of Inquiry, three individuals serving as Hamas proxies notorious for their openly anti-Semitic positions. Could you please comment on that, your response? And then my second question is, you talk about countries need to act. There has been a widespread condemnation across the world, not just from advocacy groups, but also governments and others. It seems to me that there's a number of countries that have been, let's say, more reticent to condemn Israel's behavior. I'm thinking particularly the United States and Germany. Could you please give us your appeal directly to those two countries, because you're saying countries in general, but could you be specific to those two countries, please? Thank you.
Can I respond? I've got the Chair's permission, Jamie, to answer your first question. These reports should be taken seriously, but honestly, the Israeli responses are becoming so boring. You know, they say the same thing every time. They're producing the responses by ChatGPT these days, and they spend so much money in the Foreign Ministry on propaganda, you'd think that they would actually come up with something original. I would want them to engage with the evidence, but they never engage with the evidence. They put the report into ChatGPT, and then they put out the standard response. So no one takes it seriously, and Jamie, you shouldn't either.
I'm Mohammed Al-Finich from Alga TV. According to your report, so clearly Israel commit genocide. Can you please tell us, like those headlines you can mention as Israel commit genocide, and other things we've been hearing for the last 2 years? Some member of state, they said Israel might commit genocide. After your report, do you think now the things are clear about genocide in Gaza?
Navi mentioned the 4 categories of genocidal act that we found, and we indicated in the opening statement what those 4 categories are. But your question is well placed, because we didn't go into the detail that underlay our findings in those areas. And we didn't in our statement today because these facts are so well known. We have recited them in great length in our report. Our report, you've seen it, runs out around 80 pages in length. But the facts are 60,000, 65,000 dead at least, of whom at least 20,000 are children. These deaths are not accidents. They are not collateral damage. They are the direct consequence of a military strategy of saturation bombing and scorched earth when it comes to the infrastructure of Gaza and the people of Gaza. The numbers that are seriously, physically or mentally injured are enormous, and that's the second category. We are told, we haven't done comparisons with other wars, but we are told that the number of children that have had one or both legs and arms amputated is greater than in any other conflict this century. Certainly we know the number of children who have lost one or both parent. The trauma, the psychological trauma for children will last their whole lives. That's mental harm. The physical injury to people, the amputations, the illnesses, the compounding of disease because of a lack of medical treatment. The consequences of starvation, a child who is malnourished is affected for the rest of the child's life. Serious physical and mental harm. The destruction of conditions of life. We didn't examine the destruction of the residential towers last weekend. Of course, our report was finished before that. But that was just the culmination of what we did find, and that is the wholesale destruction of the infrastructure of Gaza. Residences, homes, hospitals, universities, schools, museums, churches, mosques, archaeological sites, roads, agricultural facilities, the fishing industry. Our reports over 2 years have built the full picture of the extent of the destruction. And the destruction is such, added in particular to the starvation policies, that the conditions of life in Gaza are unsupportable. The third category of genocidal act. And we, for the first time in a UN report, also examined the question of reproductive violence. And our report, published in March this year, dealt, amongst other things, with the destruction of fertility clinics and fertility facilities in Gaza, affecting the continuity of the Gaza population, the fourth category of genocidal act. So we have built our report on the basis of our own investigations. But we haven't taken second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand information. We haven't relied on other people's reports. We've relied on eyewitnesses, on digital evidence, photographic and video, satellite technology. We particularly have been assisted by the evidence of foreign medical workers who spent time in Gaza. They're not secondary evidence or hearsay evidence. They told us what they actually saw. And it's because of our own investigations that we came to the conclusions that we did. And that's the basis of the last part of your question. Why now? Why now? Because now, after painstakingly collected all of this evidence, now we are able to do what lawyers do. Collect evidence, find facts, apply the law. And this report is our conclusions.
Thank you very much, Abdullah Massi from Al Arabi TV. Thanks for this insightful report and well-documented report. Even the Israelis are not happy with it. As you always, like moments ago, the Israeli ambassador said that this report is full of lie and allegation against Israel. Talking about Israeli officials, in your report you named Herzog, Netanyahu, and Gallant for incitement. Now, my question is, what action should state take after this report? And my second question is like as a follow-up of my colleague from the EP, what single binding step must the government take within 30 days under the Genocide Convention? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So far as those named as having been responsible for the incitement of genocide, we have made a recommendation to the International Criminal Court that examine the evidence in relation to their statements and consider whether they should be prosecuted. That is a matter for the court. I should add that we have focused on the three of the top officials responsible for this area, but there are many, many statements by Israeli political and civilian leaders that incite genocide, and also by others, including some media commentators in Israel that have been inciting genocide. So we just looked at the tip of the iceberg, and that is those at the very top of the command pyramid within Israeli society. The incitement to genocide is a separate standalone crime under the Rome Statute, and that's what we're focused on, that crime of incitement in naming them at the top of the pyramid of command. So it's up to the court, but we have provided the evidence in our report, and we've made a recommendation to the court, and we will see what action the court takes.
Jeremy Lange for the French Public Radio. Kind of a follow-up question to my colleagues' previous ones. Another way to ask you for that is, are you hoping that from now on, the UN, the Secretary General, the High Commissioner, will use the word genocide and not acts of genocide? And same thing for the state parties. And also, are you calling, it's a yes or no question, are you calling for Israeli state leaders, Benjamin Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, and Isaac Herzog, to be brought before the ICC?
Yeah, look, just a short addition. Others have commented on genocide before in relation to Gaza. I mean, there have been some excellent NGO reports, and particularly I would single out the report of Francesca Albanese, the Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory. A strong report, a well-argued report, produced by a different methodology from ours. Our methodology is based, as I said before, on our own investigations and our own conclusions. So I can say that given that this is investigative-based, this is likely to be the most authoritative report on the question of genocide in Gaza until the International Court of Justice delivers its decision in 2 or possibly 3 years' time. So pending the decision of the court, this is it. And it's up to the Secretary-General and the High Commissioner to make their own decisions, but I would expect that they would start using the word genocide based upon our report after it's released now.
Yes, hi, thank you. Agnès Pedro from AFP. I have two small questions, I hope. The U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, yesterday he talked about barbaric animals, talking about Hamas. So I would be interested to know if you think that this could be considered as well as inciting to genocide, as I think the word animals is in the report as well. And then after the publication of this report, I would like also I would be interested to know what would you say as well to the Israeli society, given that their leaders are clearly pointed in the report and the conclusions of the report are quite strong. So what do you say to them, what they should do or what they could do as well? Thank you.
The Rubio question I'll answer very quickly. I haven't read what he said, and I haven't got the faintest idea what its impact may be. But I do want to join Navi on the second question, because to me this is one of the most significant issues. I hope that our report will reach through to the people of Israel beyond the majority, not all, but the majority of the Israeli media that consistently wipes out critical information that people are entitled to and that people need. The people of Israel have been betrayed by their government from the beginning. Betrayed on the 7th of October when 1,200 Israeli people were killed. Betrayed by the government in the government's abject refusal to take action to rescue hostages. Betrayed by the Israeli government in pursuing for 2 years now this genocidal war that has made the peace and security and the prosperity of the Israeli people almost impossible for the foreseeable future. The people of Israel are victims in this as much, no, not as much. There's no comparison with the suffering of the Palestinian people in the last 2 years. But the people of Israel are also the victims of this, victims of the betrayal of their own government. And anything that I can do and we can do that will assist the people of Israel to see what is happening, to take responsibility for their government's actions and act to end it, is only a good, is only a positive. We cannot understand how traumatic the 7th of October was for the people of Israel. And the trauma and their suffering has been ruthlessly manipulated by Netanyahu and his cronies for the last 2 years. And it's time that it stopped. And it's time that those who were responsible for this were held accountable.
Yeah, thanks for taking the question. There's a significant gap between plausible evidence of genocide referenced by the ICJ in its provisional order and your conclusion that intent to commit genocide was the only reasonable inference that could be drawn. I'm just wondering there are other possible explanations for some of the incidents that you cite in the report. Military units acting on their own, getting carried away, the chaos of war, that it wasn't necessarily a specific plan. Were there specific issues or incidents or acts that helped convince you that you were dealing with intent that was the only reasonable inference? Thank you.
Again, could I just add a little to what Navi has said, Nick? The position of the ICJ is entirely understandable. I mean, as Navi said, they hadn't finished the case, but also they were looking at this 2 years ago. And the best indicator of how strong the ICJ was in what it said has been the hysterical action by the State of Israel and the United States to the ICJ's interim provisional measures based upon the evidence available to it. But I think the ICJ went a long way. That was 2 years ago. Of course, our findings now are different because we've had 2 years to investigate. And we conduct the investigations ourselves. The ICJ is dependent upon evidence being put before it. So we have an advantage in that sense. I'm sorry, the second question again, I got focused on the first.
It was really what allowed you to bridge the gap between plausible evidence and this being the only reasonable inference, intent.
Investigation and reporting. We've been criticised for being slow, and I accept that it's taken a long time, but that's a direct product of our methodology. We've produced reports in the last 2 years on what happened in the first 3 months. The saturation bombing campaign, the continuing slaughter, the destruction of the healthcare facilities, the destruction of educational facilities, sex and gender-based violence, destruction of cultural properties, including mosques, churches, archaeological sites, universities, libraries, museums. We've done all that. And it's that investigation and those conclusions that enable us to say that these were genocidal acts, that they were committed intentionally. And what enabled us to make the leap from fact to genocidal purpose were the two things that we have highlighted. First, there is direct evidence in the statements of the Israeli leaders in positions of command responsibility. And second, there is a comprehensive, widespread, in fact Gaza-wide pattern of operations that lead to no other reasonable inference than this is occurring because of a genocidal purpose. So it's the combination of our own investigations and the breadth of what is happening, the extremity of what is happening. This is no minor matter. The extremity of what is happening is such that we could come to no other reasonable inference than genocidal purpose. But that was in addition to the cold, hard facts of what they said. It comes out of their own mouths.
Thank you. To both of you, the question is, there seems to be some kind of a conundrum between the the Genocide Convention of 1948 and the Rome Treaty. Some countries, for example, are signatories to the Genocide Convention, while they are not to the Rome Treaty. Why I'm asking this question is the Indian issue here. India has, doesn't it enjoin on India, for example, to stop all kinds of either defense or commercial dealings with Israel, since it's a member of the Genocide Convention, but not a member of the Rome Treaty? Thank you.
The difference between the Genocide Convention and the Rome Statute in this case is simply a difference of process. The Genocide Convention provides a process of the International Court of Justice. The Rome Statute, and it deals with states. The Rome Statute deals with individual accountability, and it provides the process of the International Criminal Court. But the law in relation to genocide, the prohibition of genocide, the obligation to prevent genocide and to punish genocide, These are customary international law provisions that apply to all states, whether they've ratified the Genocide Convention or not, and whether they have ratified the Rome Statute or not. So the difference is one of process. It's not a difference of law. And all countries in the world, whether ratifying one or other or neither, are subject to international law that says that genocide must be prevented, genocide must not be committed, genocide must not be incited, and where it occurs, genocide must be punished. And this is where they have existing obligations. They don't have to wait for the International Court of Justice's decision. In fact, for me, the most significant aspect of the interim orders of 26 January 2024 was that every country in the world was put on notice by the International Court of Justice that there was a plausible risk of genocide in Gaza. And if it had not happened before that, it certainly happened then, that every country in the world became obliged under the law to take action, not to speak fine words, to take action to prevent genocide. There can be no doubt whatsoever that that obligation was activated on the 24th of January 2024, if not before. And in response to your question, that applies as much to India as Jamie, it applies to Germany and the United States, as it applies to my country and every other country.